All right, let's start with this quote from our source material. If you're anything like me, you think New Year's resolutions are stupid.
Well, that's certainly one way to clear the room right at the start.
It's provocative, for sure. But, I mean, let's be honest. Look at the calendar. It's mid-January 2026.
We're past the honeymoon phase.
Totally. And if we're being brutally honest with ourselves, most of those shiny promises we made, 2 weeks ago? The gym memberships, the no sugar packs.
I'm finally going to learn French.
Right. They're already collecting dust. The gyms are emptying out again. The journals are, half blank on the nightstand.
It's just the statistical reality. I mean,
Right.
by the third week of January, the vast majority of people have reverted to the mean. That dopamine hit of New Year, New Me has worn off.
And reality sets in.
Yeah.
Which I think brings us perfectly to today's deep dive. We are unpacking this massive comprehensive guide by an author who just goes by Dan.
And the title is Aggressive.
It's aggressive, yeah. It's almost unbelievable how to fix your entire life in one day. And I have to admit, when I first saw that, my clickbait alarm just went screaming.
Of course. It sounds like a magic pill.
Right. But having gone through the material, I think you'd agree it is actually the opposite of a magic pill. This isn't about, drink more water or wake up at 4 a.m.
No, it is not a list of tips.
No, it feels much heavier than that. It feels more like an engineering manual for your own mind.
That's a great way to put it. It's really about a fundamental restructuring of your identity. And the source material, it pulls from some pretty complex stuff. Teleology, cybernetics, ego development.
But it uses all that to answer this one really practical and frankly painful question.
How do you stop drifting through your own life?
Exactly. The core promise is that you can use this specific protocol, a single day of intense, focused work, to launch a completely new life trajectory.
And we should be clear, not that you finish all the work in one day.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
But that you swap out the entire operating system.
Right. Think of it like a giant ship heading for an iceberg. The ship is heavy, right? It takes a long time to physically turn.
Sure.
But the decision to turn the wheel, that happens in a moment. And once that wheel is turned, the trajectory is fundamentally different, even if the scenery looks the same for a little while.
Okay, so let's look at that wheel. The guide starts with what he calls the foundation. And his big argument is that we're all obsessed with the wrong order of change. We focus on action, not identity. Why is that such a trap?
Because most people are attempting what's called second-order change. They say, I'm going to go to the gym, or I will write 500 words today.
That's an action.
That's a change in action, yes. But they haven't addressed the first order, which is their identity. So you're trying to build a skyscraper on, like, a rotting foundation.
It's eventually just going to collapse.
It has to, because the person building it is still the same person.
There's a great analogy in the text that really made this click for me. He compares a bodybuilder to a CEO. And from the outside, we look at them and we think, wow, look at that discipline, the grind. I wish I could just force myself to do that.
But that's a complete misunderstanding of their internal reality. And this is so crucial to get if you want to change anything.
Right. The source asks, do you think the bodybuilder has to grind to eat healthy? Does the CEO have to discipline themselves to lead?
And the answer is, of course not. For the bodybuilder, sitting on the couch eating a bag of Doritos, that would be the grind. It would feel physically disgusting to them.
And the CEO lying in bed till noon would be excruciating.
Exactly. They aren't forcing themselves to do the work. They're just acting in alignment with who they fundamentally believe they are.
Honestly, that's a terrifying distinction, because my default assumption is just that successful people have a deeper well of willpower than I do.
But they're just better at suffering.
Yeah, that they're suffering more effectively. But what this guide is saying is, no, that's not it. They've just adopted a lifestyle where not doing the work feels disgusting.
It's all about gravitational pull. That's a key concept here. Until your new reason for lighting, your new identity, has a higher gravitational pull than your old habits.
You'll always snap back.
You'll always revert. You can't just try harder. You have to get to a point where your old habits are genuinely repulsive because you see with total clarity where they lead.
So if we aren't where we want to be, it's because we're not the person who would be there. But why are we stuck? Why is it so hard to just decide to be that new person?
And this is where the guide gets into the psychology of it all. It brings up a concept called teleology.
Okay, teleology. That sounds like a biology term, or maybe even theology. What is that?
It comes from the Greek telos, which means end or goal. And in this context, it just means that All of our behavior is goal-oriented. Every single thing you do serves a purpose,
Even if that purpose is totally unconscious.
especially if it's unconscious.
This was the part that just hit me like a ton of bricks. He uses the example of procrastination. When I procrastinate, my first instinct is to beat myself up. I'm lazy, I lack discipline.
I'm broken.
Right, but the teleological view argues that you're not broken at all. Your procrastination is actually a successful attempt to achieve a hidden goal.
And that hidden goal might be something like protect myself from the judgment that would come if I actually finished this thing and it wasn't any good.
So I'm not failing to work.
You are succeeding at protecting your ego.
Wow.
Your brain has calculated that the potential pain of failure is worse than the current pain of not trying. So you successfully achieve the goal of safety.
That puts a totally different spin on the whole dead-end job scenario, too. It's not that you lack courage to quit, it's that your unconscious goal is actually safety and predictability.
Precisely. Or your goal is not looking like a failure to people who think that a steady job is the only definition of success. You're actually winning the game you're playing. The problem is, it's the wrong game.
And this connects to what he calls the anatomy of identity. It's a cycle, right? We perceive reality through a goal, we act, we get feedback, and eventually that whole loop becomes automatic. It becomes who I am.
And once it becomes who I am, we defend it like our life depends on it.
You mean like physically defend it?
Literally. This is fascinating biology.
Sure.
When your identity is challenged, your politics, your self-perception as a victim, even just being the chill guy who doesn't try too hard, your body goes into fight or flight.
Seriously.
Yeah. It reacts the same way it would if a tiger walked into the room.
So that resistance I feel when I even think about changing, that tightness in my chest, that sudden urge to check my phone, that's my brain thinking I'm about to die.
Yes. To change is to kill the old self. Your brain interprets that as death. That is why we stay stuck. We will always prioritize the known hell over the unknown heaven.
The source touches on stages of mind here, or ego development. Without getting too deep into the academic models, the basic idea is moving from just, following rules or seeking approval.
To seeing your identity as a useful fiction. That's the big leap. That's the construct-aware stage. You realize that I'm a procrastinator isn't a biological fact. It's not your eye color.
It's story.
It's a story you told yourself to stay safe. And stories can be rewritten.
Okay, so if my identity is a story and my bad habits are just hidden goals, how do we actually do the rewrite? This is where the source pivots to a definition of intelligence I'd never heard before. He quotes Naval Ravikant.
The only real test of intelligence is if you get what you want out of life.
That's brutal. I mean, it completely strips away academic credentials, IQ points, everything. You can have a PhD, you can be the smartest person in any room, but if you're miserable and stuck...
But by this definition, you're failing the intelligence test. It reclaims intelligence as a practical skill,
Right.
a verb, not a noun. And that leads directly to the next big concept, cybernetics.
Again, sounds like sci-fi. Robots and lasers.
Right, but it's much simpler. It comes from the Greek word for steering or governance. Just think of a thermostat in your house.
Okay.
It have a goal, right? Say 72 degrees. It senses the current reality. The room is 68, so it acts. It turns on the heat. It senses, compares, and corrects. That is the cybernetic loop. Act, sense, compare, correct.
So high intelligence, in this framework, isn't about knowing a bunch of facts. It's about being good at steering.
That's it exactly. Low intelligence is getting stuck on a problem and just giving up. It's the inability to learn from the error signal. High intelligence is realizing that any problem is solvable on a long enough time scale if you just keep iterating that loop. You steer the ship. You don't just let it drift into the iceberg.
He gives a formula for success. Agency plus opportunity plus intelligence.
And if you lack the intelligence, that ability to steer and correct course, you just squander the opportunity. It doesn't matter how much agency you think you have. You'll just crash the car faster.
Okay, so we've got the theory. Our foundation is rotten. We're steering towards safety instead of growth, and we need to grab the wheel. So, how?
This brings us to the protocol itself.
The one-day protocol, and we should really emphasize this, it requires a full day. You can't do this between Zoom calls or while you're watching TV. It's you, a pen, and paper.
No AI doing it for you.
No, it's an excavation. It's broken into 3 parts: morning, day, and evening. Let's start with the morning. Psychological excavation.
This is about digging up all the rot. And the first step is to identify your dull dissatisfaction.
I love that phrase. It's not deep, crippling depression. It's the stuff you've just learned tolerate.
That's the danger zone. The rule is if you don't hate it, you will tolerate it. So the guide asks you to identify what you complain about over and over again, but never actually change.
And then there's this killer question. What would someone who watched your behavior, not your words, conclude that you actually want?
That forces you to confront the teleology again.
Oh, totally. My words say I want to build a business. My behavior says I want to watch Netflix and avoid rejection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So once you admit that, you move to the anti-vision. And this is the scary part. You have to visualize in detail an average Tuesday 5 years from now if absolutely nothing changes.
And the source material gets very visceral here. It's not just think about it. It asks, where do you wake up? How does your body physically feel? Are you tired? Resentful?
And then you zoom out to the deathbed. What did you never let yourself feel? What identity did you cling to that cost you everything? The goal here is to generate genuine disgust.
You need the pain of staying the same to become greater than the pain of changing.
Significantly greater. You need to look at that future and just say, no, absolutely not.
There's one specific question he asked that really stood out to me. What identity would you have to give up to change?
We all have one. Maybe it's the victim or the misunderstood genius, or even just the nice guy who never sets any boundaries.
There's a social cost to dropping that mask.
A huge one. You have to face the fear that people might not like the new version of you.
That's the hardest part for me. Admitting that being the chill guy is actually just my strategy for avoiding responsibility.
Right. So once you've really sat in that discomfort, and you have to really sit in it, not just skim it, then you flip the switch to the Vision MVP.
MVP meaning minimum viable product.
Exactly. You're not planning the next 50 years. You're just asking, if I could snap my fingers and live a different life in 3 years, what does that Tuesday look like? And more importantly, who am I in that version?
So that's the morning. You've dug up the trauma, faced the nightmare, glimpsed the dream. Now, part 2. Throughout the day, this isn't just sitting and writing anymore.
No, this is where the cybernetics comes in. It's about pattern interrupts. We live, 90% of our day on autopilot?
At least.
So the guide suggests setting alarms on your phone throughout the day with these really confronting questions.
I love how practical this is. You know, imagine you're scrolling Instagram at 11 a.m., just zoning out, and your alarm goes off with the text, what am I avoiding right now?
It breaks the trance. It forces you to steer. Another one is, if someone filmed the last 2 hours, what would they conclude I want from life?
Oof, that is brutal. Would they think my goal is to build a great business or to find the perfect meme to send to my friends?
It forces you to confront that gap between your stated goals and your actual behavior in real time. It's embarrassing, but it wakes you up. Another great one is, am I training aliveness for safety?
So you do this all day. You're constantly interrupting the autopilot, steering back to consciousness. Then comes part 3, evening synthesis.
This is where you lock it all in. First, you name the enemy. And the enemy is never the economy or my boss. It's the internal pattern, the hidden goal.
And then instead of setting goals in the traditional sense, he suggests creating lenses. Can you explain that distinction? It sounds a little like semantics.
It's a subtle but really important shift. A goal is a finish line you cross once. A lens is a way of seeing the world. So you establish a 1-year lens. What has to be true in 1 year for me to know this pattern is broken?
Okay, so it's the filter you use to make decisions.
Yes. And then you have a 1-month lens. What makes that 1-year lens possible? And then the most important one, the daily lens. What are 2 or 3 actions that the new person, the person from your Vision MVP, would just do naturally?
It changes the framing from, I have to do this thing to get a reward, to,
I am doing this because this is who I am now. It shifts from tasks to a state of being. You're not trying to run, you are a runner.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting for me. The final part of the guide is about gamification.
Yeah, turning your life into a video game.
And I feel like gamification is such a buzzword, you know? It gets thrown around for everything.
It's totally overused, but the source uses it for a very specific neurological reason: to induce flow states. Games are designed to create obsession and focus. They hack your dopamine system. Why not use that for your own benefit?
So let's map the components. He lists 6 things you need to write down to build your game world.
Okay, first, the vision. That is how you win. That's the victory condition. You have to know what winning looks like.
Second, the anti-vision.
Those are the stakes. That's the game over screen. If you stop playing, that's where you end up. Without stakes, a game is boring.
Third, the 1-year goal.
That's the mission. Your main overarching objective.
Fourth, The 1-month project.
The boss fight. I love this reframe. Instead of dreading a big project, you see it as a level boss you have to beat. You grind, you gain XP experience, and you get loot, which is skills or resources.
5th, the daily levers.
Your quests, the small, repeatable actions that build up your character's stats.
And finally, constraints.
The rules of the game. What are you not willing to sacrifice? Your health? Your family time? Every good game has rules. If you could just cheat your way to the end, it wouldn't be satisfying.
And the source says this whole structure creates a force field.
Yes, because when you have this hierarchy mission, boss fight, quests, it protects you from shiny object syndrome. A new opportunity comes up, you just ask, does this help me beat the current boss fight? If the answer is no, you ignore it. It just simplifies everything.
It makes the obsession feel healthy. You're not just working hard, you're playing a game you designed and you designed it to win.
And that ties it all back to the beginning. The bodybuilder isn't suffering. They're playing a game they love. The CEO is playing a game they love. This whole protocol is about designing a game you actually want to play instead of the generic NPC game society handed you.
So let's recap this journey, because we've covered a lot of ground. New Year's resolutions fail because they are just surface-level actions on a rotting foundation of identity.
To fix that, you have to understand that all your bad behaviors are actually successful attempts to meet unconscious goals, which are usually about safety or protecting yourself from judgment.
You use cybernetics, the art of steering, to constantly correct your course. You use the one-day protocol to excavate the rot, interrupt your autopilot, and synthesize a whole new identity.
And then you structure it all as a game with quests and boss fights. To keep yourself engaged and in that state of flow, you need to make the change permanent.
It does sound like a lot of work for one day, though. I can see people hesitating, to commit a full Saturday to digging up their own psychological garbage.
It is intense. There is no way around that. But you have to consider the alternative. The alternative is that average Tuesday 5 years from now.
The gray, dull dissatisfaction.
The regret. And when you compare it to that, one day of intense psychological work is an absolute bargain.
That's the ultimate perspective shift, isn't it? We are talking about saving the one resource you can never, ever get back.
Time. Exactly. You can make more money, you can find new friends, get a new job. You cannot get back the last 5 years you spent just drifting.
Before we wrap this up, I want to leave our listener, the learner, with one final thought from the source material. It's a question that, honestly, it made me squirm when I read it.
It's the one that cuts through all the excuses.
What is the most embarrassing reason you haven't changed yet? The one that makes you sound weak or scared rather than reasonable? And what would happen if you admitted that truth today?
If you can answer that honestly, you can change everything.
Thanks for diving in with us. Now go fix your life. We'll see you next time.